But we should, I guess, mention with regards to his wealth, his lawyers submitted something that said he was worth $559 million, and then they have, properties. He has the little St. James Island. They said worth $60 million. Great St. James Island worth $22 million. Property in Paris, property in New Mexico, property in Florida, the Manhattan Mansion. But I guess the point is, essentially, they have every reason to lowball that. Like Miami Herald found like $4.5 million in Paradise Papers accounts that he didn't declare. So the reality is, like, yeah, he's probably close to a billionaire, if not an actual straight up billionaire.
Yeah.
And it is just something where.
But isn't everyone a billionaire now? Isn't that what they're telling us? Everybody's got $1 billion.
But I guess.
Except me and my friends.
But, I guess we could just kind of go through. He was denied bail, of course. He had like $70,000 cash in his safe. They found 48 loose diamonds, like various carats, which is like very good when you need to bail. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. Prosecutor said he's not valuing his art and his diamonds collection, which like those are very good for money laundering because you can sell art, like Sotheby's never checks shit. It's a very good store of value if you need like access to 100 million in a pinch.
Easier to transport than cash, too.
Yeah, that's what the guy from the 1MDB scandal that we talked about before, Joe Lowe, did. Like, when he went on the run after he got caught, he just took a bunch of Picassos with him, and that's how he's living.
Yeah.
But, and so, of course, they also found an Austrian passport from the 1980s, which listed his residence as Saudi Arabian residence.
Yeah.
And it's just all this kind of stuff where they denied bail because obviously he's a flight risk, but it raises the question if he was actually in intelligence, like CIA.
I think it's like clear that he was.
You think so?
Yeah. Why would he have an Austrian passport with there was a fake name on there too, wasn't
it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a fake
it
name.
Was, yeah, it doesn't. There's no reason for that. I mean, you could say, "Oh, yeah, he used to have citizenship somehow." It's like that doesn't explain why he has a fake name.
Yeah, and they tried to, because the government used that as evidence for his flight risk, and then then the defense attorney said, "Well, he used that in the 80s during the era of hijackings to prevent Muslim terrorists from realizing he was Jewish and like killing him or something, Leon Klinghofering him or something." And then the other thing they said is, and he never used it. It was just a safe, in case thing. And then they pointed out, well, there's a bunch of stamps in it, there's fucking passport stamps in it. Like it was used, and they had no answer for that. But if it's a fake passport, then it couldn't have been used by anybody else, right? Because it's got his picture in it.
Yeah.
So that just can't be the case. He had to have been using this thing. He literally was traveling under an assumed name.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's of course
under an assumed name.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's of course that Daily Beast, Vicky Ward reported that Alex Acosta, the former labor secretary at the time U.S. attorney, he told the Trump transition that I was told Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. He said he took one meeting about this and then left it alone. He didn't deny that. Alex Acosta didn't deny that at a press conference. And then I found in 2001, there was a British journalist named Nigel Roser who was writing about the royal family because Prince Andrew was hanging out with Epstein. And he said Epstein, quote, has a license to carry a concealed weapon and once claimed to have worked for the CIA, although he now denies it. And it's like, it's impossible to get a license for a gun in New York City.
Yeah, him and Trump are the only ones.
No, really, it's something like there's 15 people that have fucking concealed carry permits.
Trump did claim that he was one of them.
Really?
Yeah, he did. He said that, which is one of his best, funniest lies. Because the idea of him carrying a gun.
There's a gun store in Chinatown, and if you go in there, I went in there one time, there's a Chinese guy that works there. He's like, yeah, get out, no license, you get out. It's like, this is your business. Yeah, you don't have license, get out if you don't have it. Like, immediately. Nobody goes in there.
Right.
But it is something where it's like, Ghislaine Maxwell is accused, she hasn't been charged with anything, of essentially in multiple sworn affidavits of being
caring too much about the ocean.
Of being his pimp, bringing underage girls to him.
Mm-hmm. And actually, the term is bottom bitch. Yeah, your bottom dollar bitches. She's not the pimp, he's the pimp. And her job is to turn out new women.
But so, yeah, her dad, Robert Maxwell, was there was an entire book written about how he was in Mossad. He was a British publisher who turned up dead in 1991. He washed up off his yacht after he was either pushed or jumped in the ocean. And he was British citizen, and he got a state funeral in Israel, where the speaker there said nobody will ever know how much he has done for Israel. You know, so it's like it makes sense where Epstein meets his daughter Ghislaine Maxwell around 1991, and then from there is where most of the abuse allegations come from the 90s, early 2000s. So it's like, I mean, it's totally conceivable he's either CIA or Mossad. And I guess, like, the other thing that's kind of the open question is that Virginia Roberts is one of the accusers who sued Ghislaine Maxwell in 2015 for defamation because she called her a liar for saying Ghislaine Maxwell molested her along with Epstein.
Yeah.
And then they settled, but these 2,000 pages related to that are all under seal, and then the second appeals court has ordered them to be unsealed, and they might even be unsealed next week.
It's crazy that no one will care if it is just a weird Mossad thing. No one will fucking care at all that we spent billions of dollars that was funneled to us from U.S. taxpayers to make every elite in America rape children for some reason. And then people will be like, I don't know. Meanwhile, a Russian person makes one face emoji app. And they're like, it's a police state. They're using your data to do something.
I'm just imagining them like whipping votes for the outlaw BDS vote with the Epstein tapes.
Yeah.
What if all of like the politicians who are like it's a Mossad operation to blackmail all these politicians, and they're all like thrown in jail, and then all the worst case scenario stuff happens to Israel, like they're immediately invaded now that America's pulled out of everything.
Whoopsie daisy. Whoops.
But that's the thing. It's like, if it is like some sort of intelligence operation, then it kind of makes you wonder, why would that be necessary? Because do you really need to do that to keep American elites on board with supporting Israel?
Well, if that is the thing that has been doing it,
I guess.
There's not, like the amount of support for Israel is only like just fucking increased. Right. With less need for it in the last like 30 years. And it's like, what if that's the fucking keystone to the whole thing, is that they're all on tape sodomizing an 8-year-old in a weird Syrian bathhouse?
Yeah, I mean, that might be it. I have no idea. But I think there's the alternate explanation is that it's not necessarily that the order of operations is sort of the other way, is that this is just a thing that happens, that Epstein filled a role that elite society needed of this procurer that could be trusted. I mean, his career path really does look like somebody who was literally groomed and drafted up through the ranks at every level by people more powerful than him, with the idea that he had some value add to provide to them, which absolutely had nothing to do with his genius math abilities.
Yeah. Instead of the next James Bond being a black lady, it should just be a pedophile. Or it should be a black lady pedophile. She should be just having sex with children.
Finally, we're doing it. Yeah. Girl, we're showing that we can do it too.
Well, we wanted to do two things with this one: is more representation, obviously, but also a more accurate look at MI6 and what really goes on in the intelligence community.
But I mean, so this is a network that like persists. It's a need that's filled in the elite community, and that the intelligence aspect sort of comes afterwards as something that they are aware of, because they couldn't not be if they're like even basely competent, and something that needs to be basically monitored. Like, it's like, oh God, they're fucking kids again. Well, we got to make sure we know what's going on, who's involved, that so nobody who is genuinely like outside of the power nexus might get in there, like insinuate themselves, that might like create a situation where they have leverage to like fuck up what is conceived as American or Israeli interests. And it's just sort of like it's the intelligence department, the intelligence industry, or intelligence agencies are aware of this. They monitor it to keep track on it and make sure that it isn't compromising them, and that they're not really like, it's good to have in the back pocket to have these people's child fucking on record, but they're going to do what rich people do. The elite are going to do what they do. Like, they're going to do what is seen as in the interests of, the United States and their client states like Israel and Saudi Arabia. And they're going to cement those relationships through kid fucking ritually. And the CIA and Mossad are sort of just there to like stand outside the door and make sure that like no rogue Russians or something, like a Chinese guy with like a USB stick shows up. So that like at the next trade conference, President Xi can just like pull up a PowerPoint presentation. And all of a sudden we're on the yawn and the United dollar is gone.
Yeah.
Let Huawei in.
Yeah, but if you had a video of President Xi eating children, I don't think anyone in China would care.
No, that's the beauty part. Like, they're hardened against it.
Yeah, you can't compromise. We're the only one. Exactly. You can't compromise a Chinese person.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have a video of them as a child referring to an adult by their first name. That's like the only thing that
violating
yeah.
Confucian filial piety.
Yeah.
But it is something where there was that article in Vanity Fair by Gabe Sherman, and he quotes the appeals court ruling that says these 2,000 pages that are supposedly to be unsealed soon contain allegations against, quote, numerous prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, a well-known prime minister, who I'm going to guess is
got to be Barack,
of Israel, Israeli prime minister 99 to 2001, and other world leaders, unquote. So it's something where it's like there's just a lot of speculation, which maybe we could add to, but just from this like Vanity Fair article, in the past decade, a source close to Epstein said, a guy who'd done business with Epstein said Bill Gates, Larry Summers, and Steve Bannon visited the mansion, and this would be after he got out of prison.
See, whenever I remember I read about the Bannon thing a few weeks ago, and I just immediately thought of that story about that fucking acid-scorched bathtub at that rental property he had. You know about that, Nick?
No.
So he had this very messy litigation in Miami a few years ago before he started Breitbart, I think, when he was just sort of like running around doing coke and like trying to set up entertainment deals. He had a rental home in Miami, and he was sued by the owner after he left for just catastrophic damage. Like, they just turn it into a fucking crack house, basically. Just complete shit on the walls type stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they reported is that the very expensive marble bathtub had acid burns on it.
Oh, it's to like dissolve a body?
I mean, that's what I thought immediately, and I was like, LOL. And now it's like, Madden hanging out with Epstein. That makes me think even more. He's just dissolving fucking bodies in there.
Yeah, it's funny. I read that Don Simpson biography recently, and compared to the rest of them, it's like he was like a fucking Mormon, basically. It's like there's just nothing.
He would hire prostitutes who were of age.
Yeah.
And he'd slap them around, but he would also pay them and never dissolve any of them.
He would have them fuck him
and
shit, and do like weird, like they would wear strap-ons, and he was in all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
And
nobody got dissolved.
Nobody was dissolved. Don Simpson never had anyone murdered. He was just a fucking
supported sex workers.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he was a moron that hated himself, and but he was slick.
Yeah.
And he could like sell shitty movies.
Well, it is something where, so these documents, these 2,000 pages, they all relate to Virginia Roberts is one of the accusers. She was trafficked by Epstein between 99 and 2002.
That's the Billy Joel songs. Billy Joel met her. He's the one that turned her out. He was there at Epstein's place.
That's what In the Air
like,
Tonight
we got a problem. Billy's drunk and he's writing songs again. Billy's writing songs. He's using everyone's real name.
He's writing a sequel to We Didn't Start the Fire. It's just a list of everyone on the flight logs. Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton.
But yeah, so like Virginia Roberts has alleged that Alan Dershowitz.
If you think about it, Long Island is the original pedophile island. That's the original Little St. James is Long Island in its entirety.
Virginia Roberts has alleged that Alan Dershowitz raped her at the New Mexico mansion. So the thing is, like, I don't know if we mentioned this.
Did I tell you, this is I started telling people because I don't think they give a shit, but I visited the Lampoon. We did a show in Boston.
The Harvard.
Yeah. And so I guess Dersh's grandson wrote for the Lampoon for a little bit, and so all these like Lampoon
I bet his
kids,
fucking packet is amazing.
these Lampoon kids like knew him or whatever, and they were like, he was kind of lame. And he's like, but one time he told it he was like bragging about losing his virginity, and he had just gone on vacation with his fucking grandpa. And he's like, and after all that fucking Epstein shit came out, we like figured out what dates those were, and they were like when he was like, I brought my grandson on the plane. So it like fucking lines up with like him getting like fucking a child, getting his like bring his grandson along to get his cherry popped on the.
Jesus Christ.
Now that's all fucking hearsay or whatever. But I would someone from Harvard lie?
And that's never happened.
He's a co-head writer on SNL now.
Yeah.
But so I guess I just mentioned that because another thing is Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book was, the housekeeper in Palm Beach tried to sell this. He got charged with extortion for it. He tried to sell it to one of the attorneys, and he died in 2014. But before he sold this Black Book, and you can look at it on Gawker, he circled names that he's alleged were either witnesses or perpetrators. And the thing is, like, former Democrat New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson happens to be circled in there. Another New Mexico governor is in there as well. So it's just something where it's like we're speculating about what's in these 2,000 pages.
When that came out initially, because like I started getting interested in Epstein again after the Kevin Spacey thing, because it's like Kevin Spacey ties into Singer or whatever. And I was more concerned with David Geffen and Spielberg, who I think are like, also pedophiles, just on the Hollywood.
Well, that's
side.
the other 4chan thing, so we should probably take
And
that.
Epstein's the nexus, though, because like Spacey's there. Spacey's heavy on Epstein too.
Yeah, Spacey's there or whatever. But Chris Tucker is on those like flight logs, and I remember looking at it and then seeing somebody be like, "Oh, it's a different Chris Tucker." I'm like,
that's what I thought too. Yeah,
that makes sense. But then you look into it, and it's like it's that Chris Tucker, and it's like, what if Chris Tucker is the one behind it? Nobody's really considered.
Facilities, basically consolidating control over patient data by HHS itself or a series of contractors, the main one of which is very secretive and has only really existed since the September 11th era, since 2001, and has been contracting with HHS ever since. Basically, these cybersecurity professionals were claiming to fulfill this void left by the lack of, IT staffers protecting them. They offered their services for free, and they are now directly partnered with the U.S. government as well as U.S. law enforcement agencies. Their main partner in the U.S. government is a relatively new agency overseen by DHS called CISA, which is currently headed by a guy named Chris Krebs, who used to be Microsoft's vice president for cybersecurity before he was chosen to fill that role. And it's very interesting that half of the 4 founding members of the CTI League are also Microsoft cybersecurity researchers and workers that run its security research center.
Yeah, this is so interesting because I think people have heard whispers of cyber attacks this year with so much going on. It's hard to even get down to that level, but I don't think people have heard the extent of what's going on. You write, over the past several months, 80% of healthcare institutions in the U.S. have reported being targeted by some sort of cyber attack, ranging from minor to severe, with an uptick in phishing attempts and spam specifically. Most of these attempts have been aimed at illegally acquiring troves of patient data, ding, ding, ding,
right,
including the recent hacks of hospitals in Chicago and Utah. About 20% of the hacks and cyber attacks reported by hospitals and medical facilities since March directly affected the facilities. capacity to function optimally with a much smaller percentage of those, including ransomware attacks. I mean, this sounds like a big problem, but there are reasons to believe that these are sort of false flag attacks being blamed on foreign nations, right?
Yeah, well, I certainly think that's possible. One reason I didn't really mention in the article is the fact that all this focus on patient data, not just by the federal government, like I mentioned, by HHS, it's also been a huge focus of Silicon Valley, which is currently in this huge, I guess you could call it, Cold War of sorts over artificial intelligence, trying to get as much data as possible and beat Chinese AI companies. Microsoft is at the center of that. And of course, here they are basically offering their quote unquote services for free to all these healthcare institutions, while at the same time you have the federal agency in charge of protecting critical electronic infrastructure in the United States, including the healthcare system and the voting system, all being run by a former Microsoft executive. And then on the other side of this, we also have another figure who is basically the original founder of the CTI League and its most public face, its spokesperson as well, a guy named Ohad Zaidenberg, who currently works for the cybersecurity firm based in Israel called Clear Sky, but he is a former commander in Unit 8200. He started off in that unit as an analyst of Persian cyber activity, meaning Iran, right? And then later became a commander in that unit, overseeing, I think, almost 100 soldiers, all focused on Iran specifically. He claims to still focus on Iran as a strategic intelligence target, and has actually been at the center and often the sole source of accusations that have linked Iran's government to cyber attacks in the past, most recently the hack of Gilead Pharmaceuticals and its antiviral drug remdesivir, which has been recommended and used against coronavirus since this really started back in March. It's also worth pointing out, too, that Gilead has a lot of ties to the U.S. establishment, specifically the Pentagon. It used to be headed by Donald Rumsfeld. What's interesting is that the timing of this hack, which was discovered by Zaidenberg and allegedly thwarted by him, is that Gilead is part of this consortium of several pharmaceutical companies, of which Gilead is one, that is also partnered with CTI League.
Wow. And yeah, you get into such detail about the companies that Zaidenberg has worked for. I guess they always are changing their name. It's always confusing, this kind of stuff. But this long history of fraud and espionage targeting the U.S. federal government, and it's just a very concerning history. And when you fold in that history, it's like, well, what are they doing now? Probably they're not up to any good.
Right. I definitely think that's a fair conclusion to draw from what we're looking at. I mean, it's very rare that cybersecurity professionals at major high-paying companies that make like 6 figures a year would just suddenly be like, yeah, we're going to do this stuff for free, especially an ex-Unit 8200 member. The salaries offered to them for their private startups and things like that. I mean, this is reported on Israeli media all the time, that they are offered, astronomical figures per hour of their time. And so it's just kind of odd that they would offer all this stuff for free. And of course, they're also advertising the fact that they're focusing on healthcare institutions, but more recently, they have been seeking to help protect other critical infrastructure in the United States, like dams. Iran and Clear Sky, Ohad Zaidenberg's company, have also accused Iran of hacking a dam in New York not that long ago. It's worth pointing that out. They're also looking to, quote unquote, protect nuclear reactors and a bunch of other aspects of U.S. infrastructure, which is, just kind of odd that this is all being sort of approved of essentially by the U.S. government, being done in partnership with them. But, what's weird is that I've been talking about these 4 founding members, right? But no one knows who the other members are. CTI League has 1,400 members right now, estimated according to their own figures, coming from a bunch of different countries around the world. And basically all you had to do to get in is to sign up, and your entrance into the group is approved by one of the 4 founding members who were, Microsoft or, ex-Unit 8200, still currently working with a company with links to Israel's government, right? So any of those guys can just say, yeah, come on in, and give them entrance to the operations of this league, which, as I said earlier, is, partnered with a lot of key parts of critical health infrastructure in the U.S. and is seeking to expand that now. They're also involved in helping the government fight against disinformation, right, related to COVID-19, which includes things like people organizing because they oppose quarantine measures or mask measures, things like that, which of course could very well be organic and not disinfo campaigns tied to a state actor, given a lot of the stuff that's been going on over the past several months in relation to information that's come out about mask mandates, about, are lockdowns really worth it, among other things. It's basically suggesting that that's all made up from their perspective.
Wow. And on the Microsoft side of the CTI League, you do mention in that article Nate Warfield and Chris Mills, who both work for the Microsoft Security Response Center. And you say that it is worth noting that the Microsoft Security Response Center is also directly affiliated with Microsoft's Election Guard, a voting machine software program that was developed by companies closely tied to the Pentagon's infamous research brand DARPA and Israeli military intelligence unit 8200, and creates several risks to voting security despite claiming it makes it safer. So, this is the kind of thing that I try to talk to people about when they really aren't into conspiracy. It's like, look at Bill Gates and all the things that he has put his money into, one of them being reworking software-based education. And surprise, surprise, where is one of the big battlegrounds right now? It's like the classroom. And
right.
A year ago, there was no justification for this software-based learning, and all of a sudden there is. And he's all over the health side of it too.
Right.
Now we're talking about election machines, and that's just another scary pie for his fingers to be in.
Right. Well, also Election Guard, right, is already partnered with several voting machine manufacturers throughout the United States. And what's also concerning is that, as I mentioned earlier, this Chris Krebs guy who's in charge of this DHS overseeing agency on critical infrastructure, right, is one of the key people in government currently lobbying for Election Guard to be adopted in the United States. Of course, we can pretty much see it now, right, that the 2020 election is going to be a total chaotic clusterfuck and free-for-all. Right. So I think it will eventually end up being a proposed quote unquote solution by government and people like Krebs and Microsoft and whatever, the use of Election Guard because of, the mail-in voting not working or, accusations of fraud and things like that we already know are going to happen in this year's election because they've essentially told us. Right. So the more chaotic it is this election, right, the more solutions they have to propose for subsequent elections if there are subsequent elections. So it seems like Election Guard is well poised to benefit from that.
Yes, good point. And to go back a little bit to Zaydenberg and Clear Sky, you mentioned that there was an FBI security alert earlier this year that cited only Clear Sky and Zaydenberg for these claims of linking Iran's government to all these cyber attacks we're having. And to quote that, you say, media reports failed to mention the extreme extent to which Iran itself has been the subject of cyber attacks over the course of 2020. For instance, in February, a cyber attack took down an estimated 25% of Iran's internet, with some alleging U.S. involvement in a similar attack that had targeted Iran just months prior. More recently, a series of several mysterious fires and other acts of industrial sabotage across Iran over the past few months have been linked to Israeli intelligence operations. In some cases, Israeli officials have acknowledged the Zionist state's role in these events. It's like, man, blame the person that is actually a victim of the things that you're doing on both sides. And we've talked to guests before who tried to draw attention to this concern of Israel exporting their software to many other countries and basically taking control over their critical infrastructure, as you mentioned. And this seems to be the evidence of at least its capabilities being tested in Iran.
Right. Well, so Iran has been a known and admitted target. Unit 8200 and also the NSA. The NSA and Unit 8200, for example, work together to produce Stuxnet, probably the best well-known cyber attack of the past 20 years that targeted facilities in Iran, nuclear facilities, right, and totally disrupted their function. And what we've been seeing going on now, these acts of industrial sabotage, I guess you could say, fires, not just at, nuclear power facilities, but also like at grain storage sites, food stores, essentially, also being targeted. And you're also having people like Yossi Cohen, who's the current head of Mossad, essentially leaking to Israeli media that, yes, it's Israeli intelligence that's doing these things to Iran. It's kind of disconcerting. If you look at the U.S. side, though, a country that isn't ostensibly considered to be a target of Israel's aggressive electronic espionage tactics, you look at, the New York power grid, for example. The key dams in New York's power infrastructure are now powered by a company called Impress, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of a state-owned Israeli weapons company that produced Iron Dome. So, that doesn't seem to be, that's a foreign military company, right? It's basically like a foreign, I don't know, any other country outside the U.S. being like, yeah, we're going to have our dams guarded by Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. It just doesn't seem like something you would do for national security purposes. But instead in New York, we're seeing things like that, expand to a considerable degree, largely through, edicts, I guess you could say, from New York's Governor Cuomo, who also has put people like Bill Gates and Google's Eric Schmidt in charge of reimagining life in the state there.
Yes, yeah, I was going to definitely ask you about that too, but there have been so many explosions this year, random explosions.
Yes.
Even here in San Diego, a Navy ship caught fire and burned for like 4 days. I could smell it miles away. And it's like, how many of these are related to some kind of digital attack, some kind of software-based attack, and how many are just organic accidents? And it makes you wonder, because you can look at these, photos where people have compiled all the weird explosions, and it's a lot. It's a lot for only being halfway through this year. And so this is where we get to an interesting punchline to this detailed setup. But we have this COVID-19 Cyber Threat Intelligence League and a wave of cyber attacks being blamed on Iran. And then, to quote you again, a lot of quotes, coincidentally, Phosphorus, as Microsoft calls them, is also the group at the center of the Iranian hacker allegations promoted by Clear Sky and Zadenberg, which refers to the same group by the name Charming Kitten. The overlap is not very surprising given Microsoft's long-standing ties to Israelis' Unit 8200, as well as the fact that Microsoft as a company and its two co-founders, Paul Allen and Bill Gates, personally ensured the success of an Israeli intelligence-linked tech company then led by Isabel Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, who boasts close ties to Israel's national security state. It's like, wow. Now we're off to the races, looping in the Maxwell family, but we talked about her dad in the past and the Promise software scandal.
Right.
And of course, the second generation is also involved in this very same stuff. And here's Microsoft's founders being the ones who are kind of championing this company and rising them to the top. It's like, what is going on here?
Right. Well, the involvement of Bill Gates and also Paul Allen in preventing the collapse, essentially, of a company, Israeli company led by Isabel Maxwell, that all took place in the late 90s and early 2000s. But we do know that Bill Gates was associated with Epstein to some extent by as early as 1995, and that a 2001 article from the UK's Evening Standard reported Epstein having made millions of dollars from his business links with Bill Gates. This has been completely ignored by mainstream media and also most of independent media, oddly enough. So what were those business ties? We don't exactly know, though in 1995, around this period of time, Ghislaine Maxwell's two sisters, who are twins, are Christine and Isabel. They had a company along with their two ex-husbands called the McKinley Group, which has this search engine, sometimes referred to as the first search engine, called Magellan. It actually ended up having several deals, very lucrative deals, with Microsoft in 1995. What hasn't been reported about that company is that Ghislaine Maxwell had a major stake in that company, and in the late 90s frequently referred to herself as a, quote, internet operator when asked by the press about her job. This is, of course, before any of her activities with Epstein related to sexual blackmail or human trafficking had gotten any sort of attention at all. And these were press people asking her about her activities in relation to, like UK tabloids that would occasionally write articles about the Maxwell family in relation to the notoriety, I guess you could say, of their father, Robert Maxwell, right? So at some point, the person responsible for hammering out that deal between the McKinley Group and Microsoft, that would have been Isabel Maxwell, who is the vice president of the company and engaged in those types of deals with different partners, company partners during that time, right? So at some point, she becomes the head of this president of this company called ComTouch, which is Israeli, created by former IDF guys and largely funded by the first venture capital fund set up as part of an Israeli government program that was about investing more in high tech and creating a high tech ecosystem that would eventually be spread out to other countries. Basically, the policy that is, the consequence of which are things like CTI League and Cyber Reason, NSO Group, and all of these things, right? So at some point in the late 1990s, right, she's in charge of ComTouch. ComTouch is going to go public at some point, but there is a lot of controversy about it. And the way its IPO is rescued is from this massive announcement, very conveniently timed announcement of a large investment in the company by Paul Allen from two different sources of his. One being Vulcan Ventures, I think is the name, which is his VC firm, and then another company of his. So what's interesting there is that Paul Allen, a few years later, it was revealed that he was part of this very secretive social network with Epstein and Naomi Campbell and a lot of these other people that have been seen from photographs provided by Virginia Roberts, for example, Naomi Campbell, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein all partying together and things like that. So that social network, apparently Paul Allen was part of that group. But you also have Bill Gates making a considerable personal investment, apparently through the Gates Foundation, to this company, or purchasing a stake in their stock rather, and then Microsoft going through with a purchase. I forget exactly how many thousands of shares in this company, but enough to really put it on the map. And actually, Isabel Maxwell said that it was Microsoft's interest in ComTouch that ended up putting them on the map. And ComTouch was basically running in the background of numerous private multinational corporations as part of their infrastructure of email, right? So it basically gave, if it was used for this, and based on her father's history with the Promise software and all of that, I mean, you can speculate as much, right? An essential backdoor into the emails of anyone that would use it, which also included some government partners and also ended up partnering with one of Microsoft's early Hotmail clients and things like that, right? So, definitely a lot of espionage value there. It's worth pointing out that Isabel Maxwell also said the weirdest quote about Bill Gates. She has a British accent, sort of a British accent, right, when she normally talks. But she was telling this Guardian reporter about her relationship with Bill Gates, and the guy describes her as purring and using a fake Southern Belle accent when talking about Bill Gates and how she personally convinced him to give her his money, basically. It's a real trip to read that. For anyone that's interested, it's in my last article on Isabel Maxwell. It's definitely worth reading it for yourself. But definitely very bizarre, especially when you consider that Isabel Maxwell, for example, her son ended up being made the chief of staff of the Middle East desk at Hillary Clinton's State Department during the Obama administration, which is pretty weird considering the Clintons' relationships to all of these, to Ghislaine Maxwell specifically in the Epstein scandal, that she would appoint this guy, the son of Isabel Maxwell, who was 25 at the time, right, to this position right when Arab Spring is going on. This is especially significant when we consider the fact that Isabel Maxwell, much more than Ghislaine even, right, is quoted in numerous articles as talking about her great interest in the state of Israel and political Zionism, her close friendships with her quote-unquote father's circle in Israel, including former Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres, who she personally toured around Silicon Valley, Ehud Barak, who was also close to Epstein, numerous other heads of state. She also at one point had a relatively close relationship to the son of Itzhak Shamir, who was also a Israeli prime minister that was previously employed by Robert Maxwell, right? So definitely a tangled web. And so she's very open about her, affiliations. And she, in a separate article, talks about how her son, Alex, that was put in this key role at the State Department, was also very interested in pro-Israel policies. So it's interesting he'd be placed in the State Department at that critical juncture of the Arab Spring and whatnot, in which the State Department, the CIA, and Google, among others, were intimately involved, right? It's definitely a very interesting rabbit hole to go down, the Maxwell sisters. Of course, the other one on the other side, Christine, actually got involved in creating a company called Gilead that was essentially just like Promise, essentially a successor to Promise, that she co-founded with a active CIA officer. I'm not going to go too much into that today because I'm going to be doing a big report on it, so I don't want to give too much away before I get it out on paper, right? But essentially, this company, Gilead, is the link between Promise and what is basically Promise today, Palantir, Peter Thiel's company. Because there was a time right after 2001, right after the September 11th attacks, where there was a call to redo big data in the national security state at the FBI and the intelligence community and whatnot. And it was Gilead, this Christine Maxwell created company, that filled that void for a period of several years. It's not around anymore. And of course, Palantir, during this period of time where Gilead was created by Christine Maxwell and the CIA officer named Alan Wade, Palantir is incubated by the CIA with InQtel money, and Palantir's only client is the CIA until 2008, and then now is one of the largest government.
I have to think about this. Maybe there's a way to get down there unseen. I don't know. I'll call you later. Is that what I think it is?
Yes. Just make sure the information will be put to good use.
Oh, you can bank on that. Who are you? What's your role in this?
I'm not important. Good luck.
It sounds like Miss Red has quite a scoop on her hands. My guess is this will cause a major market upset, which is sure to bring the director out from her fortified office.
Oh my, this...
It's like if you didn't know anything about the Franklin scandal, you didn't know about Epstein, or you hadn't read these books, you didn't know the stories your uncle told you, and then eventually you just found out there was an island where all these politicians were going to and having sex with kids and they were getting compromised. Your mind would melt, and then you would get paranoid, and then you would start thinking that everybody's a pedophile and that there's tunnels underground, when the reality is it is bad, but sometimes you have to take a step back and take a breath and realize that, like, there are good people, and not everybody is evil, but there is a lot of evil out there, but you got to take a step back and try to realize, like, what is what.
Well, there's one picture of Clinton getting massaged by this woman, and they were using it as sort of evidence, but the woman's clearly a woman. She's in her 20s, and they were saying...
Yeah, but she'd been working for him since she was like 15.
Let's never use Clinton as the example of the QAnon people being wrong.
That's not even what I'm saying.
She's
like,
never
there
the
it is. That's a grown woman.
She's
right?
a grown-up, yeah.
So,
listen, let's be clear. The media did a limited hangout. They went with these whistleblowers instead of all the other people. And the fact that the witnesses reported at Epstein Island in the Caribbean, Little St. George, and on the other island too, that boats would pull up in the middle of the night to these shacks with little brown kids. And those are the ones that get disappeared.
But who reported this?
It's in major documentaries. It's in Netflix documentaries. It's in all the witnesses we talked to. And they said, my people I talked to over 10 years ago said, you remember me telling you about it, they've got an island in the Caribbean, they've got an island in the Mediterranean, that they've got ranches in the Southwest, and that they...
Well, he had a ranch in New Mexico, right?
Yeah, that came out later. I wasn't told exactly where.
I mean, the idea that these kids would disappear potentially isn't crazy. I mean,
no, it's not crazy at all.
It's not crazy at all to think.
Here's an example. I was told by a high-level source that major Hollywood producers, by name, ran a cult where they branded women next to their vagina.
The Nixium thing.
But I put it out 2 years before it broke. So I was told this by a high-level source.
I remember you talking to me about it.
And then they even had articles going in Huffington Post. Jones claims Harvey Weinstein's connected to groups that do all this, and I was just going off what people told me, and I didn't even say Weinstein. That's what's crazy is they were already trying to cover it in case I said that. They're like, oh, Weinstein's not involved in branding women. Well, it never even came out he was. It was the other guy.
Right.
So it's just...
But what you said did turn out to be true.
Yeah.
As fantastic as it sounded, as outrageous, as ridiculous, it turned out to be true, now it's in the news.
First time I ever heard of Ted Gunderson. Let me pull him up. Ted Gunderson. It's on Wikipedia, up to be FBI director. He was the head of L.A. Imagine what he learned there. And he's telling me, he goes, man, I've been in the FBI 20 years. I got to be the head of L.A. He goes, like, this devil worshiping everywhere. Blew me away. Pedophilia, you name it. He knew about the Manson thing really being a satanic ritual.
And there was a senator from Nebraska named John DeCamp, who I know
he was friends with.
And John DeCamp was a guy who he blew the whole thing wide open. Like
he was CIA.
He blew the whole thing wide open. Was DeCamp CIA? You think? But he was one.
He told me I was friends with him.
He was one of the good ones. Like
he was involved in Operation Phoenix.
And then they killed. Well, that was his mentor. So DeCamp's mentor was a guy who was a high-level CIA guy. Who Jamie could pull that up. He was in a Phoenix operation, and he was killed. And I forget
in the canoe.
In the canoe, and the dinner was still on the table.
Wait a minute, he was killed in a canoe?
Yeah, this was a high-level CIA guy. John DeCamp was a Nebraska senator who broke open this human trafficking operation.
By the way, I'm having
hold on.
It was a pedophile cult. It was trafficking kids across America, and it was centered out of the Omaha Federal Credit Union. It was being run by a guy named Larry King, who was this rising star in the Republican Party. He's probably still alive. He has pictures of Maureen Reagan, all that stuff. These kids were being trafficked to D.C., to L.A., to New York, wherever. DeCamp stumbled upon the occult, weird ritual shit going on, too, in addition to the pedophilia and all that. And then he went to this guy, his mentor, who he knew from Vietnam, from the military, who was a CIA guy, whose name is escaping me.
William Colby.
William Colby. He went to William Colby, and William Colby basically said to DeCamp, listen, you're going up against forces that are way too powerful. You don't even know what you're knocking on here. And then William Colby, I think, changed his mind and said, fuck it, you know what? We should stop doing, if we're going to fight this, let's fight it. And then a little while later, William Colby, who was in great health, great shape, has an accident in his canoe, is found dead in a river right by his house with his dinner still on the table. So it's like nobody gets up in the middle of the dinner to go canoeing. So this has been a common theme forever, whereas if you go against these people, you find you're dead.
He was 76 when he drowned, though.
Yeah, but in a canoe while his dinner was still on the table.
Sometimes people have heart attacks when they're 76.
I understand.
I understand that.
that.
Okay, we're connecting dots here that maybe we don't need to disclose. Okay. William Colby, director of Central Intelligence, chose to disclose some of the nation's darkest secrets to save the spy service he loved, drowned on April 27th in a tributary of
I've
the
talked to
Potomac
folks.
River.
They killed him.
He was 76.
How about
this
guy Gary Caradori, who was a private investigator hired to get to the bottom of the
It's like
Franklin
Barry Seal,
scandal.
man. They're getting rid of the people.
They just get rid of them.
All right, so listen, we've done Bohemian Grove. We've done Bohemian Grove. Let me tell you. Senator DeCamp was on record running major level Operation Phoenix, which was a high level CIA torture operation and execution operation. So Apocalypse Now is kind of based on some of the things they did. But he's on record, highly decorated, did that.
I don't want to go too far away from the Epstein thing because I still have a whole lot more questions.
Let's go back to Epstein.
Okay. The island itself. First of all, Epstein had this crazy place in New York City.
7-story palace.
That the guy who owned Victoria's Secrets, he gave it to him?
Yeah, because of probably blackmail.
Right. And then there was other billionaires who it turned out had been glossed over. And
including Bill Gates. Bill Gates stays there and tried to deny it. But Bill Gates denies staying with Epstein, but confirmed he stayed there and in his Paris home.
Okay. And this was also, he met with him post his first arrest, correct?
Yes.
Because he was arrested.
Yeah, a lot of people did. Chelsea Handler had dinner with him, I believe, after the arrest, too. I mean, a lot of people looked past that, apparently.
Yeah, that British royal.
Okay, Bill Gates met with Jeffrey Epstein many times despite his past. And
I got to say, Jamie's really fast.
He's the best.
He's the best.
So let's go back to this.
He's married to Dillon.
Where's
Epstein had a huge interest in tech. He loved tech.
Yes.
Yes. And he wanted to, he brought scientists and big tech people over his house in New York City.
Here's the deal. Yeah. They were doing, I said this over 10 years ago, that they were involved in secret breeding programs for cloning.
Okay, before we get to that, scientists, how were they getting these where are they getting all the money, first of all? Where's he getting the money to get this island? Where's he getting the money to buy this giant house or get this?
We now know that he was a nexus point from the dirty sides of the CIA, MI6, and Mossad at least.
Yeah.
And so they were compromising people. And then as he would compromise people, most of them knew they were being compromised. They wanted to be compromised, to be let in to then run operations and be given even more money.
He was also the money manager for a guy named Les Wexner, who's a billionaire who owns Victoria's Secret, The Limited, among other things.
And that's the guy
he was gifting Epstein a property. He gave him a $70
Well, that's where he got
million
some of the first money.
Well, Eric Weinstein, who was a legit financial guy, looked at him and said, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Of course not.
He said he's playing a role.
And then
he met with him.
Scientists were like that too. When they went to his house, they go, "Oh, Epstein's is like playing a role.
Yes,
he has no, so whatever he's doing, he's working for somebody."
Well, let me tell you, they want to corrupt the scientific elite to go along with their agenda on climate change, to go along with their agenda on viruses, to go along with their agenda because they know scientists are respected. So you want to have them compromised so they go along with whatever it is you want.
So whatever it is you want. So if you want to do something and manipulate reality to make your agenda go through, you compromise the scientists, and then these elite experts who you have on film having sex with 16-year-olds, then you can...
So maybe man-made global warming is real and really bad. It doesn't matter. The solution they have is a global tax. You pay them, so it's a scam. But as big as Epstein was, he was small compared to these other finders groups and other organizations that even came out in the news at the time in the late 80s, early 90s. And then the communist Chinese, they're running the blackmail rings with Hunter Biden and the Democratic Party and Dianne Feinstein and all these people at levels way, way, way above anything anybody else has seen.
Jesus Christ.
I always got a bad feeling from Dianne Feinstein.
I never had any feeling.
Turned out her main assistant was a Chinese actual agent.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Ghislaine Maxwell Powell pleads for release, says jailed heiress starving in humiliating clothes.
And that's unfair for her, and I think, this...
What an elitist statement.
Release.
You should give her, she on record, this woman was involved in all these horrible things, and now, oh my God, she's in humiliating clothes.
Why do you think Trump said, like, when they asked her about it, well, I wish her well?
He's always smart-ass, like, because Epstein was killed in prison.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I wish her well because they want to get data.
He's also like a rich guy. He knew her, right?
Yeah. He later clarified it. I told you what he said.
Do you think Trump's cleaning everything in this?
Oh, you want to get the MO on Trump?
Well, I would like to because I know that you're.
I'll give you. No.
There he goes.
Here we go.
My only superpower is that I really try to give you the accurate thing. Doesn't mean I'm always right, but about 95% of the time. That's why earlier we went down that rabbit trail when I'm saying, listen, Trump doesn't like lobbyists. He fired them all. He's trying to make the best decisions for everybody in a pragmatic free market to not have one-sided trade deals. But his blind side was by him not letting lobbyists in, everyone around him became unofficial lobbyists. That became a 20-minute rabbit hole, which I'm not bitching about.
Okay.
But let me tell you about Trump. Trump's dad was a super right-wing, pro-America dude who was actually a huge funder of the John Birch Society. He introduced him to the head of the House Un-American Activities group that worked for Nixon and Eisenhower that actually ran the Red Scare. Some of it was good, some of it was bad. Roy Cohn. And so his personal lawyer for 25 years was Roy Cohn, who was like
Joe McCarthy's best friend, right?
Joe McCarthy's chief of staff.
Chief of staff, yeah.
I mean, he ran it.
He ran it, yeah.
He ran House and Senate. He was the big enchilada. And so Trump was actually heavily influenced by his father that was anti-communist, acted nice and liberal in New York, but like knew all this. John Birch Society, like, we're talking whole nine yards.
Well, wasn't Roy Cohn also involved in some blackmail stuff?
Oh, he was huge.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was the whole gay mafia stuff too.
Right.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ, you guys are deep. You're deep in this,
I
Tim.
know this. Yeah, I know this.
Well,
I
it's all
fell
facts.
asleep listening every night. I would fall asleep. I'd listen to about a half hour, and then I would trail off him, the globalist, and I would fall asleep. And now I can't do that anymore. Thank you, YouTube.
You can, Infowars.com.
I know.
We're halfway into this, I should say. People ask, people come up to the street, they say, I used to love you. I'm sorry you're off air now. We have record traffic at Infowars.com and band.video. Band.video. Yeah. We have videos. I've had videos this week with 3 million views, 2 million views, 1 million views.
Yeah.
It's all there.
My producer, Ben Avery, watches Infowars.com like during holidays. His family will be having Christmas. He'll be in a room watching Infowars.
So speaking of censorship, YouTube and Facebook have now banned all the QAnon stuff, right?
Which is crazy.
Well, this is what's crazy. Like, what's next? You gonna ban JFK conspiracy?
Well, if I make a
theories?
joke about QAnon, am I going to get banned? That's the other problem for
But
comedians.
it's like you said, the Young Turks show. Well, let's just first talk about the Young Turks.
What is the show that
The Jacobins?
Because Tim Dillon had put the show. He'd put it. I'm gonna send it to you, Jamie, so you can see what it is. I'm gonna send you the video that Tim Dillon, or excuse
Tim
me,
Pool.
Tim Pool had sent
Yeah.
me. I'm gonna send it to you right now, Jamie.
So let me explain this.
Okay.
The Young Turds are anti-free speech for everybody, including me. And then she goes, but I'm not anti-free speech. I just want Alex Jones banned. But then they have this new show called The Jacobins. Well, let's talk about evil. The Young Turks were the group that ran the Armenian genocide. They ran the Armenian genocide on record, killed over 1.5 million Christians. They named themselves the Young Turks. They go, oh, we don't know what that means. Now they're called the Jacobins. The Jacobins ran the French Revolution and were the Illuminati. I told you about them earlier.
Yeah.
So it's like every name they've got is like the Hitler Youth, basically. I mean, the Young Turks, and
That
now
is a very unfortunate name. The Young
Well, they
Turks.
also people run around with, the people that watch a lot of those shows walk around with either the Che Guevara shirts or they're unironically calling themselves Maoists. These are like suburban white kids walking around going, I'm a Maoist. I mean, it's kind of fun.
800
the recruitment mechanisms are
Right.
pretty clear. The other one that just I found out about a few days ago was you're talking about Leon Black, this
Right.
guy who's the only other person who is directly tied to Epstein in terms of giving him money. Like there's only two named people who we can say definitively through records provided him with money. One is Wexner and the other is Leon Black, right? Like $10 million to one of his charities and stuff. And he is a private equity guy with a very wide suite of holdings, one of which is Academy, formerly Blackwater.
Right.
Which
They just change their name every 6
yeah,
years.
they were G for a
Like,
while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, which was the weirdest one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
XI.
Yeah.
Just make it stupid. Make it hard to pronounce. Nobody will care. And Blackwater has been wildly implicated in human trafficking in everywhere that they've been put. Like accusations of literally just bringing people, young women, into these the compounds and stuff and trafficking them around from Afghanistan, the Middle East, talking about the fucking Syrian bathhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, just from what we see from his public disclosures, the people he's connected to, the entities he's connected to, have the infrastructure to just be conveyor belts for victims, basically.
Right, yeah, like for Leon Black, according to the New York Post, in 2015, Black threw a lavish pool party at his Hamptons estates. A source there said Jeffrey Epstein was there, along with a number of women in bathing suits. And this is 2015. This is long after the allegations are very well known. He says in the New York Times it was reported that Mr. Epstein was an investor in Environmental Solutions Worldwide, a maker of emission control products with several people close to Leon Black, including his 4 children. And then, of course, in 2015, Epstein has this charity that has been reported on by the Daily Beast. The only known cash it got was $10 million from Leon Black.
Right.
So it's like, why is this private equity guy giving him $10 million? And then I guess just one other thing on that Victoria's Secret from the New York Post. They quote some other agent who says essentially. This other agent says Ghislaine Maxwell was a fixture at Victoria's Secret events. And they say, quote, they were always these really trashy shows full of rich men in the audience. Ghislaine acted as the kind of Nazi guard, telling everyone where they were sitting in the audience and that she had new, quote, Pop-Tarts, which is what she called the young models.
Oh, my God.
So it's like everything indicates that Ghislaine Maxwell was the high society pimp for Epstein, among other people.
So you guys, obviously, you've seen that picture that's floating around, the Getty image. Is that real?
Yeah. Of her at the Chelsea wedding?
No. That I know about. It's this other image that I saw some QAnon idiot post, and then I was like, okay, this is too on the nose. And then I looked for it, and it looks like it is an actual Getty image that you can buy from their catalog,
right.
And that is not. I posted it when I first saw it, and because I was even at the time, I was like, this might not be real, and then of course somebody immediately was like, oh yeah, that's not a real Getty image, and that's photoshopped. But then after that, somebody linked the actual Getty image, like
link?
the link on the website where you could buy the print for $500. You guys know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know. What is this photo?
Okay, so there's this guy. He's got a whole thing. He's a society photographer, Patrick McManson or something, and he's got tons of images on Getty of high society events.
Right.
And one of them was for a party that Ghislaine Maxwell was at her home in 2007 in New York. This guy Patrick McMullen, and it was commemorating like somebody's stupid like bistro or some bullshit. But this is the picture that was posted. I don't know who the guy is, but that's
what?
Wait,
and
where is she in that?
She
at
was there, but that's not in the image.
It's hard to describe, but that's like a guy with standing below like a mask.
It's a mask of what looks like the devil with a giant rope beard. But then the real thing that fucked with me, and somebody insisted this was photoshopped, and I was like, you know what, it probably is. This is too on the nose. But then I saw the fucking Getty image, clickable link.
Right.
It was like nobody photoshopped that. Look at the forehead of the skull.
Oh, that's like what, a pentagram?
No, it's not. A pentagram would be kind of explicable.
Well, it's a ghost from Pac-Man.
It's hard to see, but in the corner there.
Is it one of those symbols from Twin Peaks?
What is that?
It's a triangle.
But like Illuminati triangle?
No, like the fucking Nambla triangle. The whole thing that started Pizzagate.
Right. Yeah, again.
It's hard to see because it's dark, but it's an actual. It looks like that. Exactly like that image from the FBI thing that they're always posting on 4chan.
Right.
Of like what the symbols are.
The downfall of elite societies was inviting Getty Images photographers.
But no, like I saw that and like I still don't know if it's real, and I just keep thinking if I don't stop looking at this, I'm going to go insane.
Right.
Like there's no way to like. I'll never be able to know what I'm looking at.
Right.
I'll never be able to know what's true. There's zero chance.
Right.
I'm so far removed from it. I'm only getting this. I'm trying to like trying to drink from the fire hose of just internet fucking data. I'm just gonna be like putting pieces together as like I see them, which is just a recipe for schizophrenia.
Have you read the descriptions of the art in his New York mansion?
Oh, I know about the painting of him in jail. Is there other? Oh, right, and the dentist chair in the bathroom.
And like just a wall of like eyeballs.
Jesus Christ!
Wait, the dentist chair in the bathroom?
Yeah, he's got like an old-timey dentist chair in the bathroom. It looks like something from Saw. I saw the picture of it. It's like no, it's like no one on earth would see that and be like, oh, that's a nice little touch. That's a cute. Did you get that at fucking Crate and Barrel?
He has a bunch of art that's not like particularly highly valued given his wealth. Like the eyeball one, for instance.
That's just because he loves it.
Yeah, I mean, fucking Tony Podesta's art collection is bizarre.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like when the Pizzagate thing broke, I remember reading about the art and being like, yes, this is weird, but I could totally see this as just being like a pretentious guy, like wanting to be edgy.
Yeah.
Like specifically the thing of like the Dahmer body. Like he has this like coffee table that's in a model of a crime scene photo of one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. And it's like, that's gross, but also you could totally see him at a party like explaining it to people to look cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like this fucking old lame-o.
At a pizza party, which they seem to have all the time.
They love to have
all the time. Even after the Pizzagate thing, it's like, how much do you fucking love pizza? That you're like, hey, remember that thing that was probably traumatic for us? And somebody fucking brought a gun and fired it at our friend's pizza restaurant? Let's continue to have pizza parties all the time. They're still doing it.
They love pizza, folks.
Switch to fucking sandwich. I don't give a shit. Meatball parm. There's no reason you can afford it. Just have pasta. It's a get together. I mean, fuck. Like,
it goes back to the temple thing. Either it's like we're committed to this; it's part of our dark rituals, or we're gonna have fun with it. This is what they think we do. We're gonna lean into it.
Triangle
Isn't it
slices.
funny? Like winking at each other. We're just so we're just so fucking clever, or it's a mixture of the two. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they want to get like information out there to distract people. Like we were talking about before this started, Epstein was a member of the Trilateral Commission, which
For a long time.
Another like conspiracy theory you want to go on is like people think the Trilateral Commission did 9/11 and shit.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like he was in the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, New York Academy of Sciences.
Like these are the kind of it comes back to just out of self-preservation. He's getting in rooms with incredibly powerful people who are going to want to know what they're dealing with, and his entire presentation of himself was fraudulent on its face.
Oh yeah,
and that never stopped him from getting into any of these rooms. Which means that there had to have been at some level and high enough that you could just vouch for him to people lower than you, awareness of what his role was.
So like with the theory that you posed earlier about like there's someone above him that's helping him move along.
Yeah.
With him getting arrested now, is his value like no longer useful, or is it just he's run its course of what that career was supposed to be?
Well, I think I think it's that limited hangout thing of honestly, I bet that his he probably became less of a he probably lost his position as a actual like organizer of whatever we're talking about after he got convicted, because you know just too much. But he didn't lose his social position, because that's how you guarantee him not releasing the dead man switch and releasing all the information and burning everybody.
Right.
But I think like after that conviction, you have this awareness of like, well, we can't use him anymore. So whatever other networks are existing, we have to, activate them, basically build up somebody to take his spot. And then and then at the same time, like I was saying, cut the connections, create plausible deniability around everybody who's too powerful to go down, so that if, because of, like something like the Miami Herald or the Boyce lawsuit, he gets enough public scrutiny that eventually they just gotta go after him again just to get ahead, to give to the public, it's not going to blow back on their face. And that he's just like, it's like how they fucking remove they castrate a bull or something by just like tying a rubber band around the balls until they just lose the blood and then they just fall off.
Egg-shaped penis again.
Yeah, you just tie a rubber band around the egg-shaped penis until it loses blood supply and falls off. And then it's like, what's he going to say? At this point, he doesn't have the goods anymore to fuck anybody other than people who are expendable, like Dershowitz. Dershowitz goes down, nobody's going to fucking lose any sleep.
No, he's so guilty now.
Oh, God. And that's the thing. It's like I have very little hope that anybody really... like the Clintons, that would be amazing, but it's not going to happen. But Dershowitz...
nothing will happen.
Dershowitz, I don't know. Dershowitz might go down.
I mean,
I could see that.
We still have to see if Epstein even goes down.
Right.
Yeah. I mean...
Yes, it's so public, And they denied him bail.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that, like if you can protect a fucking Eric Garner cop, you can protect fucking Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah,
but he's also like 1 million times more implicated and worse than Weinstein, and like Weinstein went down. So
yeah, but I mean Weinstein's just like a lecherous guy. I don't like it's not. Like this guy was already protected to like a horrific degree in fucking 2006. I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
I don't know if he goes down.
I like how Mossad operatives get like post-retirement sinecures, like harassing women who are rape victims.
Kevin Spacey didn't, and that's clearly a case of like fucking witness intimidation or whatever.
Oh yeah, well that's the other thing of thinking like I'm gonna go insane because out of nowhere his accuser just pleads the fifth. Out of nowhere, just like happened to that Gallagher guy. Basically the same thing with that SEAL, the maniac SEAL who killed the civilian in Iraq. The guy, one of the main witnesses who had immunity, just on the stand says, "No, I killed the kid. It wasn't him," and he gets off. This guy who was incredibly high profile, a guy who was really loved by the higher ups in special forces, and of course Trump is literally publicly said, Like the pressure is obvious. It's a similar situation. And then I think about the people saying, "Remember that video that Spacey made?"
Yeah.
That insane weekend. What is he thinking? And at the time, it got written off as, this is just a maniac actor who's like totally narcissistic and doesn't realize how this looks. But people say, no, he was like warning them, the elite, that he can't go down.
Yeah.
And then
Bam,
the
bam,
fucking
bam.
his accuser just says, no, I'm not going to testify.
You know what blew my mind doing research for this? As of a day ago, the guy making the Jeffrey Epstein documentary decided not to make it anymore because he said it was, quote, too distasteful. And this is like the documentary of the century, and he's just right in the middle of all this shit, backing out. It's like, what the fuck did he find out?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
And as part of that, the Spacey thing, someone pointed out, and this is another thing. I might as well just drill a hole in my head like the guy in Pi. Is that there's a mug that Spacey's drinking from in that, and it's a mug with, like, I think the signature of Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, really?
It's like a commemorative mug for some fucking jubilee or something. And of course, one of the top people implicated in that Epstein network that he was involved with was Prince Andrew. And it's like, I mean, it's like, that sounds dumb, but then he just gets off out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Fuck.
There are like 30 different like commemorative or like heirloom shit in the back of him.
Oh yeah.
As he made the video.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up here, I did want to mention one more thing about Les Wexner, just something I found. And if you're interested in Les Wexner, I would recommend you look at some of the stuff by this journalist, Bob Fitrakis. He was a independent Columbus, Ohio journalist. He wrote for this paper, Columbus Alive. But the point is, he explored this confidential police report that essentially accused Les Wexner of being mobbed up, at least in the 80s, or associated with the mob. And the story is that Arthur Shapiro was a lawyer, shot twice in the head in 1985, killed mob-style killing. And just according to this confidential police report written in about 1991, at the time he was part of a Columbus law firm that represented The Limited, which is, of course, Les Wexner's brand, The Limited, now L Brands, owns Victoria's Secret. But so he was working the Les Wexner account, and it just so happens that he was the subject of an IRS investigation, and his death occurred one day prior to his appearance before a grand jury in the IRS case. And so the reason that people kind of link Les Wexner to the mob is that because there are these two people, a guy named Walsh, a Youngstown real estate developer, Edward D. Bartolo, and a trucker named Walsh were both connected, according to the report, to the Pittsburgh family, the Genovese LaRocca crime family. And so it was essentially where, like, according to one thing this journalist found, Francis J. Walsh is the guy's name. He owned the Walsh Trucking Company, and around the time of the murder, according to an interview that he found, Walsh did in excess of 90% of the Limited's trucking business during that time. And then, of course, this other guy, Les Wexner, was in some various DiBartolo. He was in a couple takeover bids in like 84 and 86. He was involved in like multi-billion-dollar takeover bids. They tried to take over Neiman Marcus at one point. So it's like clearly Wexner at least knows these two mobbed-up guys. I don't know if he actually murdered that lawyer, but it's just something to be aware of. And this gets like no press whatsoever, but we'll see if maybe the Epstein connection has people look into this a little more.
Well, I mean, yeah, if Wexner is just able to just hang out like in his dialysis tent or whatever the fuck he's in at this point, he's pretty old, and not get dragged in here, then you know that, yeah, there's no chance that anything greater, because he is the public exhibit one of anybody who would be involved. This is the mug that he was drinking out of, that Spacey was drinking out of, and I'll read you guys the quote. It's a commemorative mug, and it's got the crown jewels on it. Westminster Abbey. It's commemorating her coronation, I think, Westminster Abbey, 2nd June 1953, and it has a nice gold leaf calligraphy quote from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Quote: "Throughout all my life and with all my heart, I shall strive to be worthy of your trust."
Jesus Christ.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It is something where, like, I think we were talking about this before we started recording, where essentially, like, Matt, you've talked about this, and I know Chomsky has talked about this too, where conspiracy theory thinking, the idea is that people understand inherently that their life is bad, but they don't understand the mechanisms through which, private equity or whatever else destroys union companies. So you essentially, instead of, like, understanding this, you say, oh, they're all pedophiles. That's why the elite are bad. And then you just start like running into this shit where more and more evidence comes out that am I insane? Is this real? Am I just going down the rabbit hole? Like,
yeah. See, the thing is my life isn't bad, and it's like, and to the extent that I even give a shit is like, if you were like, yeah, Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, all of them are in a weird pedophile cult together, I'd be like, damn. I wouldn't fucking really give a shit beyond that. I'd just be like, I don't know, that's weird that's happening,
right?
And like I wouldn't even be like, there should be a call for like the country, like. Things are already fucked up. Like, the Iraq War is fucked up.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are already fucked up that, like, a weird pedophile cult on top of it wouldn't bother me any more than I've already, like, had to make peace with the fact that, like, I'm sort of complicit in a shitty system.
Right. Like in 2008, like the entire economy was recapitalized on the back of fucking taxpayers to make whole the people who destroyed it in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone said, this sucks. We don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And all the politicians are like, yeah, this is bullshit, huh? Well, we got to do it. And it's like, yeah, I don't want that to happen. It's like, well, good luck, motherfucker. Who are you going to vote for who doesn't want to do this?
Climate change is the best example. It's like, we're all just going to die. China is like fucking like pedal to the metal, baby.
Fucking be legend.
And it's like, we're all just going to burn to death in 50 years. And it's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes out on Switch.
But I think the explanatory model is when Nick and I were talking before the show about, there are some guys who, like Epstein, are like, you know what, my real heart is in pedophilia. Mm-hmm. That's my whole, like, if I could make they got pedophile when they took the career aptitude test in high school.
Right.
And he just made good. He was the best pedophile, and he got to do his, you know what, I have not a day of it has felt like work. But for a lot of these guys at the top, it's like a thing you got to do to just stay in the club. It's oh, God, I got to fuck a kid again. God damn it, I just want to go watch the ball game.
It's like in Eastern Promises when the gay brother or the gay son makes him
have sex with a prostitute. Yeah, it's like this is how at the very, very top, like these bonds are sealed. And you just have to have this mutual implication, this mutual sense of each other's limits or lack thereof, a sense that nobody is outside. This is the way, like, it's the way, like, concentrated and power operates throughout the entire, like, spectrum of power, down to, like, precincts in like dirty cops, like who, like, the guy who won't take money is a problem.
I didn't know you get wet, Jake. It's training day.
Yeah. Training to be a pedophile.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to mention.
So wait, that article that came out where those BMW billionaire heirs said that our life is actually much harder than you think it is. It's because they have to
they have to
do all that pedophile stuff.
I got to think of like a fucking Bugatti when I do
They got to come up with the new BMW.
So we didn't mention this yet, but essentially, like, while Epstein was supposedly in jail, he was visited by women, and all the records disappeared. And now the Palm Beach PD is, like, supposedly investigating themselves about this. But the sheriff who ordered his work release is still in charge and overseeing the investigation. But
the work release where he was just getting women,
yeah,
the whole time.
He was like Escobar killing somebody in jail. Totally unaccountable.
And there's like 130,000 disappeared and stuff.
Yeah, corruption is like so funny too, because the Smollett thing is hilarious because it's like how bad woke people are at being corrupt. Right. Like just how bad that fucking DA fucked up, like sneakily letting her friend off.
Right.
So you think about like how good pedophiles are in contrast to that. I mean, even
they're
like
born into it. They
the
know
low-level pedophiles are like wife, kids, fucking $80,000 a year job,
right?
White picket fence, no one will know, and they get away with it. So imagine if you're like an elite pedophile, like that's how you go 3 decades, nobody finding out.
But so CNBC actually looked at the jail records that do exist, and they found another Bill Clinton connection. This guy Arnold Paul Prosperi was visited Epstein in prison more than at least 20 times. He was an attorney who became friends with Clinton at Georgetown University, and he later became a fundraiser for Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton commuted his sentence for filing false tax returns on his last day in the White House.
A little Mark
2001.
Rich action there,
right? So it's just something where it's like this guy who's probably conceivably linked to Bill Clinton visited Epstein at least 20 times while he was in jail. And we'll see what else comes out.
Yeah, it's like that scene in Boogie Nights when Jack goes to visit the Colonel. Mm-hmm. Only it's just they're all having fun.
Yeah. Imagine just being his cellmate. Like, well, I'm in here for siphoning gas out of a police cruiser. How about you? I really don't want to say. I like to imagine he sounds like Christopher Lambert.
Also,
I don't. He was on the plane. That drove me insane.
Speaking of, okay, so
did you know he's blind? Did we?
Yeah,
talk
we
about
talked
that?
about the blindness, which is hilarious. Just that guy, he has to have something on someone, because how did he become an actor? Just no talent, blind man who can't speak English,
Can't
and
speak
has
English.
This like Pee Wee Herman body, fucking action star. He had to have had tapes on people.
Yeah.
But talking one more about the brain,
hole,
the brain hole worm thing is. So you guys, I was listening to the episode where you just brilliantly out of thin air conjured a narrative of Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
Right.
Which after the fact, we Googled Jimmy Buffett, and of course he's implicated.
He's in there. That's the thing. Yeah. Like, I'm listening to this, and it's like it starts off as a joke. It's very funny, but then you read the lyrics to Cheeseburger in Paradise, and you're like, sacrifice. It's a fucking burger. What are you talking about?
Right.
And then it's like, well, that's still, it's like a little funny, but it's a little weird. And then, no, he's in there.
Right.
Jeez, it's like, all right, I'm just going to dip my brain in fucking battery acid.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, it's very easy to go down that road. And then, fucking eyes wide shut, man.
Yeah.
It's all right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Courtney Love has her name circled in Epstein's Black Book, and her boyfriend and money manager around the time was a guy named Dano Giacchotto or something. But the important thing is he was one of the investors in Digital Entertainment Network, which is, of course, Bryan Singer's rape children fake company. So it's like, I don't know. There's just so many weird connections that you could go absolutely insane trying to follow all of these.
Oh, that's why she had Kirk killed. He was going to blow the whistle.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining some Israeli guy.
But yeah, so this is a federal non-prosecution agreement. We'll circle back to it.
Actually, one thing real quick is that one interesting thing is part of this all fell apart because of a guidance counselor.
Really?
Yeah. There's this girl, Mary, where she started having trouble at school, and then she talked to a guidance counselor, and they found hundreds of dollars in her wallet, and eventually that led them to Epstein and his Palm Beach.
They found money in her wallet? Like what?
Yeah,
it fell out of her hand and just money through.
I don't know the details of why they were going through her wallet, but it was, yeah.
Huh.
And it's just something where, there are these other women who are allegedly sex slaves. One of them is alleged that Epstein himself said that he bought this woman from her parents, I think in Estonia or somewhere in Eastern Europe when she was 14. But these young adult women who were in the house with him who would lead these girls upstairs, and it's all horrible. But essentially, there were those co-conspirators who were immunized as part of this federal non-prosecution agreement. But again, according to the Miami Herald long piece, quote, any potential co-conspirators were also immunized as part of this federal thing. And then, of course, you have, as many people are aware, Bill Clinton is on the flight logs, having taken 26 trips on this Lolita Express.
Carpooling. That's nothing crazy. They're just hanging out,
This plane, including to, Jeffrey Epstein's little St. James Island. Apparently, on some of these trips, he ditched his Secret Service detail for some of them, which it doesn't prove anything. But
Lolita Express was, by the way, a name given to it by the locals in, I believe, the Bahamas.
The U.S. Virgin Islands.
U.S. Virgin Islands.
Mm-hmm.
I guess presumably because they saw so many young women coming out of this plane, that became a nickname amongst the locals.
The fact that he painted it yellow and black, I think, was a little on the nose.
And so there was we did for research for this, actually, James Patterson is, speaking of billionaires, the second richest author in the world. He's almost more of a brand at this point. He just kind of throws his name on things that he co-authors with people, according to one linguist. The majority of his books are not actually written by him. They're written by his co-authors. But James Patterson, he holds the Guinness record for #1 New York Times bestsellers. Again, second richest author after J.K. Rowling. But the important thing is he wrote this book, or John Connolly and Tim Malloy wrote this book.
I think he wrote the first chapter because it's fucking awful.
Yes.
And then the rest of it sounds like it comes across as written by real journalists.
Right.
But the first one, it reads like whoever was writing it was like, here's the story of a child rapist and the details of how he got caught, but I should sex it up. And so it's got these awful phrases, like he describes like the victim's apple round butt.
Oh no.
And it just
don't get horny when you're describing sex crimes.
Yeah.
I think that's just literary rule number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apple round? That's the words that they use?
Apple round butt cheeks.
That's
Boots
weird.
with the fur.
Yeah. The song came out right before he started writing.
He also describes a victim when Epstein walks in shirtless as being ripped like the jocks at her school.
But so this book, it gives kind of an overview of the case, but it is just kind of curious because some people might be aware James Patterson, who again writes this book on Jeffrey Epstein, would go on to co-write the book The President is Missing with Bill Clinton. And also, incidentally, he co-wrote a children's book, quote, Give Please a Chance with Bill O'Reilly in 2016.
Give Please a Chance?
Yes.
That's terrible.
But it is interesting. The book, just kind of like the James Patterson book, Filthy Rich, it kind of brushes over Bill Clinton. He's mentioned briefly. Like, there's kind of like one sentence, which is, I mean, there's a couple, but one of them is Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker all flew to Africa on Jeffrey Epstein's plane with Jeffrey Epstein. And that's just left there as a sentence with no follow-up.
Damn. That is the one flight I would like to get the recording.
What did they talk about, those three?
He was dressed up like Fifth Element.
Chris Tucker talking to a 13-year-old Estonian. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
I really don't.
But so, yes. So, you know, I don't know why James Patterson would write a book about Jeffrey Epstein and then go on to write a book with Bill Clinton. But, you know, in fairness, given James Patterson's reputation, it is very possible he has not actually read this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the 26 flights were left out of his book.
Yes, they did not mention.
There was.
That's the thing. It's like Chris Tucker one time went to Africa. It's like, all right, he doesn't necessarily know what's going on.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Come on, 26 times. Get out of here.
Yeah, Christ.
Yeah, and for her part, Virginia Roberts has said, and again, other Jane Does have said this, Jeffrey Epstein was receiving 2 or 3, quote, massages a day. And again, a massage was code word for molesting, abusing young children. He was receiving 2 or 3 of these